Its directive that bars U.S. airlines from flying into Tel Aviv in Israel. It issued the ban on Tuesday after a rocket hit a house close to Ben Gurion International Airport. Well, today, the European Aviation Safety Agency, which is the analogous agency in Europe, has put out a strong recommendation to airlines that they avoid the airport as well. This report comes to us from Renee Marsh.
All U.S. airline flights in and out of Israel canceled. One Delta flight turned around mid-air. The flight path shows the plane bound for Tel Aviv with 290 passengers and crew on board was diverted to Paris. The U.S. government taking no chances after last week's deadly missile attack on Malaysia Flight 17. And after this, rocket remnants found in a demolished house just 1 mile from Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. The FAA alerting airlines even before it could send out a formal 24-hour ban on flights. And jittery carriers responding immediately.
A super sensitive reaction to what happened on Monday over the Ukraine by the U.S. carriers.
Other airlines following suit, United, U.S. Air, and some international carriers, including Lufthansa, KLM, and Norwegian. But Israel is pushing back, trying to reassure airlines it is safe to fly to and from its main airport. An angry Israeli transport minister called the U.S. move a, quote, prize to terror. The country's own airline, El Al, continues to fly. Currently, the FAA prohibits U.S. airlines from flying over eastern Ukraine and Crimea, North Korea, northern Ethiopia, and Libya. U.S. planes can fly over Iraq, but only above 20,000 feet. And the FAA warns of dangers including missiles and small arms fire for airlines flying over 8 other countries, including Syria and Afghanistan. But it's up to the individual airline to heed the warning. Some critics say security decisions belong solely with governments and said FAA warnings urging airlines to use, quote, extreme caution is too vague.
I have no idea what extreme caution means at 33,000 feet in a commercial airliner that has no protection against any ground-to-air missiles. I don't know what the FAA is saying there.
More than a week ago, the military arm of Hamas threatened an attack on the airport. But to be clear, that did not prompt the FAA ban. It's the rocket attack that did it. We do know that the FAA will reassess the ban after 24 hours. But the question is, when the ban is lifted, will that reassure airlines to resume flights, or will they need a ceasefire? Renee Marsh, CNN, Washington.
Well, just yesterday, CNN's Richard Quest spoke to Tony Tyler, the head of the International Air Transport Association, or IATA for short. He said that airlines would always make their own decisions about safety.
When it comes to landing and taking off at a particular airport, clearly airlines will, as they always have in the past, make their own decision based on the facts that they can see and that can be reported of what's going on the ground and in the immediate vicinity of the airport. And that's something which has since the beginning of aviation, airlines will have made those as sort of assessments.
Well, CNN's Martin Savage is live at Ben Gurion Airport today in Tel Aviv. Martin, I understand that this rocket landed in a house that's in your line of sight. It's only about a mile away. Does that really present a significant risk here to airlines trying to take off and land at Ben Gurion?
You know, it depends who you talk to, Nina. The Israeli government would say no, that the airport here is safe, that it's protected by the much-touted Israeli Iron Dome, that is this missile defense system that has been 90% effective. But let me point out just where this missile is said to have gone, at least the neighborhood. You can see just straight out here behind me the runways, and you can see the taxiways. Just beyond the runway, you can see the first line of apartment buildings there. That is Yehud, and that is roughly the area where that rocket came down. If you're the pilot, if you're the operator of a jumbo jet full of passengers coming in, that is really too close for comfort. But again, Israel says that the security at this airport is safe enough for all international travel. El Al, that is the national airline of Israel, it continues to fly. There are a number of other airlines that continue to fly here, some from Africa, and some from Eastern Europe. But you are not seeing many of the big European carriers, and you're not seeing the American airlines here. They'll continue to assess that. The FAA continues to assess that apparently on a day-by-day basis. We should point out Israel has suffered a third civilian casualty. That notice just came out. It happened in Eshkelon. That's about 40 miles away from the airport. But it was due to a rocket coming from Hamas and Gaza. Nina?
Martin, obviously this comes 6 days after MH17 was shot out of the sky. Now, as we were reporting there, it's up to the airlines themselves to heed this advice. And as you said, some airlines are deciding to take off and land as normal. But the reality is the international community couldn't face seeing a plane being hit, could it?
Right. No, I think, it depends, of course, the perspective you have. If you're Israel, you believe that this nation is being improperly punished for what was essentially a terroristic act, it would say, conducted against its own people. In other words, you're blaming the wrong people here. However, if you are the operator of a major airline, and of course you have the safety of all the passengers on board to consider, something landing that close is just too much to consider, especially right after MH17.
All right, Martin Savage, thanks so much for joining us there.